Daniel, Debbie, and Sam, what's your preferred order? Who have time limitation?
I have
do
to
not
leave at 12:45 actually.
Let Sam go first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me go first? Oh man, okay. I didn't prepare much. I'm just gonna share my screen and show things that I think aren't so commonly known. So has anybody here been able to show images to ChatGPT? Has anybody been? Debbie, have you gotten around to?
So I watch videos of ChatGPT. So this morning, you send the link of where the image is, and then it tells you what the image is. So I know I haven't tried it.
Right. Okay. So this is like one way to do it. You can like just take a screenshot of like code, or I'm just looking at a project here. And so it will load. I'll send a link to Imgur after this. And once you have that link, you can I don't know. I like using ChatGPT 4. There is a major difference in terms of at least coding. But you could just say like interpret, this image. What? That didn't work. So try one more time. There's no birds in the picture. I'm holding a small bird.
It's a funky looking bird.
It is a funky looking bird.
I like the cat picture.
I wish, yeah, that would be a great one to do, but trying to. I've only done this one a few times, but uploaded complete. So
You probably want to go to click on the grab the link. Did you see the right side? Grab the link.
Let's try that. It looks the same. Yeah. So it's not working now. This was working for sure.
Do you have another example?
I did it before of this particular use.
I mean, you use the picture and it's working.
Yes, but I don't know which. Let me try ChatGPT 4 and see if that makes a difference. I don't know which chat that's in. So this was working just yesterday. I guess this is also a good demonstration on the unreliability of ChatGPT.
So Sam, can you describe the picture? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this just was working as recent as yesterday.
Do you remember which picture you upload? Maybe you can find the history.
I'm looking for it.
Okay, right here.
Yes. So yeah, I shared a pot. It says, you could use image hosting websites like Imgur or Gyazo. And it explains, it'll give you an explanation of the plot. And I thought that was super useful in terms of just like interpreting results. I didn't try it with code, but it could be great with code. There's just a lot of different like like for example, I might use it to say like how readable is this plot, or things, or how can I improve this for readability, for example.
Sam, can you copy paste the link? Let's take a look at the image and see whether their interpretation sound right.
Well, I don't have the link, but I have the code. So I'll just pull it up. So I was testing it on this right here, this image on the right.
So let's do a side-by-side comparison, whether it's a good interpretation.
Yeah, so it seems like the R2 square score is improving with increasing max depth, but the improvement is not very significant.
Are you sure this is this particular image?
Yeah, that's why I asked it again. I'm like, it wasn't really explaining it so well. But I just started getting into this type of like using images, so I wanted to share it because it was new to me. And so I thought it might be new to everybody else.
Sam, can you scroll up a little bit in your homework? I think the explanation sound like the other image, because it mentioned maximum depth equal to 5. So
Oh yeah,
and
okay, 5 and
actually
3.
mention
Yeah,
R squared. So it should be this plot.
Let's see. Max up and oh yes, yeah, you're right. That is correct. Thank you, Vivian.
Otherwise, the ChatGPT won't know it's a R2 square or max depths.
Right. Okay.
Must have those info in your image.
Yes. So R2 square the green. Okay, so looking at this, it says the R2 score with a max depth of 5 is only slightly better than the max depth of 3. But that's not exactly true, right?
It is, because when you look at the left side, the max depth 3 is like 0.68, while max 5 is 8.86. So we're talking about 0.2%, 0.2 improvement in R square.
But isn't that 20%? Wouldn't that be like significant?
I feel like they want to say the maximum depth 5 and 10 are close, but somehow the interpretation is saying maximum depth 3 and the 5 is close.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So, right. So it got, I think one of these it interpreted incorrectly, like the max depth of 5 and 3. One of them is 10. The slightly better one, it says it suggests improvements regarding the overfitting. You can use a train test with it. And then it gave a suggestion. But I just really generally wanted to show that this was like a possibility because it's something new to me and it could be used in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's great way to use ChatGPT.
Yeah, this is.
Did
Yeah.
you ever use it to generate some code to get yourself
Plenty.
off the ground running?
Yeah, plenty. So like yeah, I could show you actually a great example of that. Sheets give me a wrinkle. Our project. Okay, so like let's use ChatGPT 4, right? So like I made this as like what, for example, what my R Shiny dashboard should look like. And when I first was starting it, I would just write like write UI R Shiny dashboard for this, and I wouldn't even really do too much more than that.
How did you figure out your A column?
My A column?
Yeah.
Like how did I personally determine it?
I mean, how did you know by defining A column like this will enable you to generate the code?
Vivian, I had no idea. I just you know, thought I would try it. And it was very surprisingly like successful at creating our Shiny dashboard.
Because the layout you have in column 1 is actually the almost like a project design document. You have the top tab, features, I think you accidentally write a project definition documentation.
I mean, pat on the back. No, I don't know. It's, you know, so this is another way to work it. You know, also like another great example that I think is different is like here was my home birth presentation, right? So when I wanted to start writing my blog, and I didn't really like what it came up with, but what I had done is just like to share messages containing transcript of my Python project presentation. I want to write a blog about it in the to be shared with my instructors, peers, potential employers, and users. What else? It should come from an entrepreneurial perspective. All right, so this is, I know from before, it could only take about 7 minutes at least. It might start rest message 2 of 3. And then I'll go another 7 minutes because it's 20 minutes long. Hopefully, let me, nope. That's the message.
This is such a smart way to use ChatGPT, Sam. Oh
Thank
my God.
But it's really like, all right, so let's see. Like I didn't love what it gave me, but it's a great like initiator. And it, you know, for example, ChatGPT 4 is a little bit slower. But like I know like one of the instant changes once I saw it started giving me feedback, like maybe I actually have yeah, so starting to include actual numbers. It's summarizing my message, right? And like I remember saying like suggest locations and which visualizations to include, right? No. Anyways, you could, I didn't use the right terminology. I'll have to, I would have fixed that, but you know what? Maybe it's here. Yes, okay. So like here's an example. Like I basically did what I showed you, and then I asked it like, let's point out some visuals. So it would like, you know, insert visuals, and I would basically, I created a document, a Google Doc, and I would edit the Google Doc and just send it constantly back and forth. And it was like having, you know, a volley to go back and forth with on how to continuously improve it, like the tone, the simplicity of it, and so forth. So, you know,
You have a soundboard, like
yeah,
discuss how to write this idea down.
exactly. It definitely created a soundboard because there's so much information that I want to include. It really helped me like simplify it quite significantly. So I am pretty excited to also use imagery as well.
Sam, I forgot to ask one more question when you showed the Shiny app code.
Yeah.
After you generate code, how usable it is? Do you
So
need to do a lot of updates, or it's really good to go? When you run the code, it gives you the right dashboard.
It gives you the dashboard, it works. It worked very successfully most of the time. So like, you know, let me give you more of an example.
So you can just copy paste and generate the app right away.
with Shiny R, the UI, you could generate the UI almost instantly. Yeah. But like it wasn't as good, for example, with like stylization. Like there were stronger parts and weaker parts, but in terms of just generating the UI, like I guess the framework or the skeleton, it was great. Yeah.
Amazing. So other than populating explanation of picture, generate Shiny app, write blog posts, any other successful user cases?
I can't find the link anywhere I don't know which link you are at. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I was just testing out, like there's a lot of different ideas I have for products you can build on ChatGPT, but in terms of coding, let me try to see. Okay, yes, I have another good one. So Capstone, right? Okay, so like for example, there's a hedge fund. Maybe there's actually more here. Okay, so like for example, I pasted like a conversation with somebody that I want to, let me see. All right, so like my uncle has a business, right? So I wanted different ideas. I described his businesses. And I'm like, okay, what are capstone projects that I could do like from this perspective that might give me that he might find useful as well. So like it gave me a bunch of different project ideas. And then I wanted also to reach out to somebody who has a hedge fund, and that gave me 10 ideas. And then I have I asked for like give me talking points for each idea so I could discuss them further. So I even like I really just like continue mining it. Like I'll ask it maybe to bullet point those comments. And Micah, like our friend Micah, who he's like one of the creator of Google Docs, and he's now at Nest. So I'm like, what are like I try to give it some perspective, and then like ultimately ask my question. But those are like three kind of key recent things that I've been doing. And another thing with code that I find super useful is like, if I don't understand it, right, I'll be like let's say I don't understand a line of code, I'll just be like, in layman's terms, describe to me what is happening here. Right. So it helps me like dive into areas of the code that I'm not fully understanding. Just by sharing the code and then sharing the line and how it works.
Amazing. Is Malka someone you know?
I know Micah. Yeah,
See.
he was at he sang at my wedding. I mean, but he's a friend. He's really a friend. Like we're more in the same circles, and I am close with him.
It looks like Open AI looking to Malka's background.
Oh, because where is it? No, I mean, I could be like, for example, some people that will know, like obviously it knows like Elon Musk and President Biden, so it could be like if I'm going to approach President Biden, but like I have to open up ChatGPT again. Micah. So another alternative for a capstone project is to do it with Micah, who created Google Docs, is now a senior engineer at Nest. What are some capstone projects to do with him? So I don't think it like I've reached a limit with ChatGPT.
Because the topic they just suggested is very advanced.
So yeah, I mean, it depends on who it is. The projects that were suggested are super advanced. Yeah, I'd have to obviously filter through it, but
Yeah, so if you provide like Google Scholar page of this person, he might suggest some.
oh, something super advanced.
Yeah, if you are talking about someone have a lot of research work, academic background. Yeah, just stop.
I literally can't find my.
No worries.
Okay. I gotta
see.
run. So yeah, but thank you. And I hope that was helpful as a start.
It is. It's so super fun to see how you use it.
Okay. All right. I look forward to seeing the rest of everyone's as well.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Have a great one.
Debbie and Daniel, who like to go next?
I'll go next because
Go
I
ahead.
usually have a different format. So let me just bring up my presentation. And then from my current slide. So
Okay.
this is just a recap of how I use it. So my biggest time gains came from loading, because my project was based on my Python project. So then I already had written code, detailed labels, and then I just fed it into ChatGPT. And I couldn't just go from Python code to R Shiny. I had to do Python code to R code to R Shiny. And then when I loaded it in, most of the time it worked. Like that was probably the biggest gain was that. But then I started to realize that the more visuals I added, the more I had to add to server.r. So I realized I had to use source .r to break it down so I could troubleshoot better, because you have to debug at some point when you have so many visuals going on. But this was probably the best part, was just saving each visualization into R Shiny code and bringing it all together, just roping it in, saving the visual. And I did like one visual and took a break. One visual took a break. So that was how I was able to turn it out pretty fast. And then there's debugging the errors, like what is going on. And there were times when Python would sum up amounts, even if there were NAs, nulls, and then R didn't know that there were NAs. They didn't know what my data set was. So I had to look at the line itself, like what was the table that was being generated, and then add an additional piece. So sometimes they would continually say, like, is this your code you want? And then for whatever reason, I had to start running lines to realize, like, oh, it just doesn't know like one additional detail about my data set. So that was how I was able to debug it faster. And it was like with NAs or like maybe some kind of pre-processing step that Python can do that R needed to know a little more about. So I would say if you run into a debugging error that takes more than like 3 tries, try to run the line itself and see if the output is what you expect from Python, if you're doing a Python to R conversion. And then this was the heat map where I didn't even know where to start. So I first said, give me a map. And then so it gave me a map. I was like, that's good. Okay, so you have the base. So it's like a cake where you get a cake, and then sometimes they're like, I'm going to add a flower to your cake. And you're like, no, I want chocolate with balloons. So you have to start off with map, heat map in Philadelphia, heat map in Philadelphia with green color, blah. And then eventually it was just like talking to it through sequential steps that eventually they got it there. And while I had to do it multiple iterations, I did it in such a sequential build on top of the cake kind of methodology that I think this was the biggest gain, because I didn't even like use Stack Overflow for this. I used ChatGPT. And then when it came down to reading the Starbucks SEC and then the articles that were part of my store expansion component, I started feeding it the articles, because sometimes the articles were so long and then it's hard to read when you feel overwhelmed. So then I started feeding it chunks, and then it would say like, this is what it means. So I reread it again. I'm like, oh, okay, that's close enough. I hear what you're saying. So just feed it the parts you don't understand, and then make it a point in like, because you're taking project notes when you're trying to put it all together. And then sometimes I wanted it to hit a point, and then it missed the point. It took another point. So I'm like, make sure you get the summary, read the article again, and then circle the point you want, then be like, summarize it again. And then your summary is more in line with how you want your blog post to sound. So this is like an example of how I did it. I'm like, this is my summary of how I wrote it, why I chose Starbucks location. And then they got this one completely right. That in one paragraph, that's what I said in 3 paragraphs. And then this one was the Starbucks reinvention plan. And then it was a really long article, 11-minute read, and it synthesized it in one paragraph. So like, depending on the level of detail, they'll be like this or like this. And then you just have to be like, I want you to summarize just this one paragraph. So the more precise your prompt, the better it yields. So I think with specific instructions, it really saves a lot of time. And when you're a little vague, you're going to have to keep on giving it, like, spoon feed it. Like, I want to make a cake. I want this kind of cream. I want these balloons. I want, like, you have to like tell it a story. And then this one was this was like the last week. It was Tuesday. And I'm like, all right, I still have to do these things. I need to finish my dashboard. I need to write an outline. And then so I was like, give me what I should do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I just followed this. I'm like, cool beans. And then on this side was like, yesterday, I still need to do stuff. How should I prepare for this presentation? Like, you could take breaks here. I'm like, that's cool. So that helped. And then help editing the blog post was, so let's say you have all your notes from your, from everything you're doing. And then you're like, what did I just write? So you feed it back to ChatGPT. You're like, summarize what I've been doing the past month of like my project. And I'm like, and then I think you should do it like every day. You like write a journal, then you have it rewrite, like, this is what you did. So then when you read it, you're like, oh, that is what I did. And then this is how my decisions kept changing. Because I think like even in a blog post, they like when you're like, oh, I failed at this. I'm going to do it this way. And they like to hear when you switch reasons of why you did something. So it helped me express what I'm trying to say, because Chinese is my first language. So that's why I'm like, sometimes I write too long or I don't have transitions. So it helped me like get out of the weeds and then express something that would make sense to someone else who hadn't been doing my project. And then compelling blog titles is one of my favorite. I was like, how do you explain what I'm doing? And then they're like, here's 5 ideas. And I was like, this sounds pretty close. So the transition between smooth paragraphs is really key when you're a bullet point person. It helps you add these like transition words. And then I think when I started to have it summarize like specific paragraphs, I thought it was repetitive. So I actually gave it my article as a first pass, and then I printed it out and then started writing it in my own way, so it sounds more like me. And then the insights were what I was targeting, and then I fed it back to ChatGPT and sent it to Ariella. And so Ariella was like, "This looks pretty good." So I was like, "That's good." And I didn't train it to sound like me, because I'm a little bit more like uncertain, and it kept on saying it's crucial to use marketing for blah, and I'm like, no, it's just helpful. X does not cause Y, it's just correlated with Y. So like toning down like the way I would sound was important to me. So, because sometimes it sounded like it was trying to hit a point that I'm like, I don't think you can say that definitively. So I think like the tone is something you have to calibrate, or you have to just print out your article and just write it in your own language and then feed it back in to be like, help me make sure that this sounds right. And then, live learnings has been fun. So like yesterday, Vinod had asked me he asked me, why do we use scaled lasso regression? And then I typed in when to use scaled lasso regression. So I read the first point, which was warm but not correct. And then if I had read the first one or this question, it would have been right. So I think like your precision in questions like very important. Because like if you write your question slightly differently, it yields a different answer. But I do use it like during live learnings, and like when Cole was presenting about deep learning, it helped a lot to ask the question while they were teaching it. So I think it's going to be helpful when you do like modules, when you're going through all the machine learning, and just take the notes down of what you don't understand and then ask ChatGPT the question so that you can keep on making your cheat sheet. So that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, let me jump in. I'm actually quite glad to see that someone's using ChatGPT while I'm doing my live learning. So that's really exciting for me. But yeah, I think that's the comment I wanted to make. I've seen what you've said, and I've seen what Sam has said, and I have a lot of comments to add, but I'm gonna let Daniel go before I give my comments, because I don't want to jump the gun, because Daniel may have a completely different angle. And so why don't we let Daniel go, and then I will round up what my impressions are of the 3 uses that you guys have shown so far.
Okay, can we all see it?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Cool. All right. So I think this is going to be a bit more high level, or I don't know. So we'll see. Let's just dive right into some potential uses for ChatGPT. First thing is to really learn the syntax of a language. You might know semantically what you want to do, and you might know how to say it in natural language, but you might not know the syntax within the context of the language itself. I'm turning on my video to actually do what you want. So it can help you get that syntax. And in that same way, it can help you create functions or scripts to do things. Similarly, as we've already covered, it can cover debugging and explaining documentation or APIs that you find in code, and also brainstorming presentation points. So, there's a lot of what's here has already been largely covered, but it's good to review, I guess. So there are also some caveats. Everyone knows ChatGPT makes stuff up, so you shouldn't trust it from the get-go. You should make sure that what it's telling you is actually correct. The generated code is, as a result, often very slightly wrong, but it's wrong in the correct direction. It gives you a framework from which you can then fill in everything else, usually. My last caveat would be don't shirk understanding foundations. It's very easy to just copy and paste everything and then say that's that. But I would claim it's a bit like a language. If you don't produce it yourself, you're not going to actually know how to produce it yourself. So you should make sure to practice that a little bit, as otherwise you might find yourself using this a bunch, and at the end of the day, you might have not really learned much. So here's an example of creating an rshiny widget. On the left was the prompt to give a shiny UI.r widget that is a select input for the options range and month. With range, a slider is given. With month, you can then select things. So this gives you a conditional panel, more or less. And I didn't know about conditional panels when I was asking for this. So it ended up building it, and it gave that conditional structure that was needed. But as with this bullet point, what still needs adjustment? There are things that are not quite right here. For one, I didn't end up actually, never mind. Yeah, so the main thing is that this date range isn't really as a date. It's just between two real numbers, more or less, and that's not really helpful. So that needs to be adjusted still. But, this gives you most of the way there. From looking at this, you can tell, okay, I can use conditional panels to essentially do conditional things. Then just another example, the prompt is at the top this time. I tend to write things a bit like I would when beginning a proof. I list my assumptions and then tell it what I want it to do. So let df be a data frame with these columns. Now write a ggplot2 plot with data as the x-axis. And then it ends up plotting this, and that's useful. Then you can also go to, so this is kind of one way you can do it. You can ask it to do other things as well. Next, for debugging, here's some sample code. Why aren't the lines colored in this plot? And the issue is just right here. This should be within an aesthetic. And ChatGPT realizes that, and it shows you how to fix it. And the alternate way you can do it is you can provide an error message in the code, and it might sometimes fix it. You might already know what the issue is, and you can tell it that, and it can address it that way. Like I had an instance where I was passing a column name as a string, more or less, but then you can't use that string to call the column, so you have to turn that into a symbol. And I had to get at that iteratively, but knowing the fact that the input could not be a string, by saying that, ChatGPT was able to fix it. So the other parts for explain, again, this is just a simple example. Is the geom point from the above part necessary? And then this goes into a bit about what geom point is and the fact that it's not really necessary. All right, so some notes about the generated code. As you probably noticed, it's typically commented and quite readable. So it's nice to look at, it's nice to work with, and it can be changed pretty easily. Hallucinated API calls might lurk. It might end up calling functions that don't exist. You can sometimes use ChatGPT to build those functions if you know what it's supposed to do, which is pretty interesting. But as a whole, you just need to be a little bit wary about what the API calls are. I think it's best for boring and basic code, basically boilerplate that can be mass produced. Really complicated, complex things, maybe you can build that, but that's pretty hard. But if you are going to try that, as Debbie was talking about, doing it iteratively is a really good way. This is how I created the map part for my leaflet app as well. When I would look at other projects I used the map, I would just be really confused what everything was, but by building it up iteratively, I was able to get an understanding of what each of the parts were, which is really helpful. Then the last thing, the training set is all pre-2022. I think it ended in December 2021. So really new libraries may not be accessible, and ChatGPT won't really be able to address that. Now about effectively using as a learning tool. This kind of gets back to the don't shirk your foundations part. You want to seek to properly understand the generated code. If you're just copy and pasting it, you're not going to learn about it. You should try to understand the syntax, know how to syntactically build these things. You should know the relationships between objects. Basically, try to think of how the UI.R and the server.R are related, or how certain things within code interact with each other. And then the last thing, I really think you should be writing some of this. After I learned that one could use conditional panels, I created the conditional panels by my own, just for the own practice. I think that's pretty important for this sort of thing. And then you can also ask about the documentation. Sam showed a lot of that. And after building, it's good to just review the concepts that you've learned and used, and maybe try to write down a bit of those. That's just for internalizing. Then finally, I guess some other GPT or large language models to note. Bing GPT is pretty nice. It's free. It cites sources, so I actually prefer to use it when brainstorming stuff because it will point me towards something that I can verify actually says that. And it also does code quite well. So I do recommend using that if you want, especially for the sources aspect. And then the last one, I'm going to call it find.com. It's also free, and it's specifically for developers. It's best for asking questions rather than code creation itself. You know, we could probably go here, and anyone have any questions they want to ask?
Daniel, can you show a few ways to really show us what's the advantage of using different platform and combination of them?
This one, so the main thing is that ChatGPT and Bing GPT, they're both very, very general language models. My understanding is for this one, it's kind of been narrowed down so that it does things almost always more like a developer. I only found out about this one yesterday, so I don't really know it that much. Other than that, I wasn't able to use it to construct code, but you know, if you me about random.
Okay, no
was-
problem. How about let's go to ChatGPT. Maybe you can show us a few good example how you utilize it.
So that was, oh, I think you missed the pictures, did you?
Which picture?
So just these examples.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was
Yeah, no
temporarily
worries.
lost
Yeah,
my
I'll talk
Wi-Fi
about
for a
them.
little bit.
Yep. So
Yeah.
this first one was telling it to build a shiny widget, or I didn't know how to get different panels for different results. And so I asked this and it gave me conditional panels. It still had to be adjusted right here because things need to be dates and not numeric. And then you can ask it to build a plot. You can ask it to debug a plot or other code, and you can use it to explain stuff. So those are all ways I was using it. I guess another good thing about both of these is they have 3 different settings. So there's the concise, the normal, and the creative. So if you want responses accordingly, you can do that.
Cool, awesome. Thank you for introducing the extra resources.
Mhm.
I post in a direct chat group, so 3 authors can write a blog post together about this topic. And I also show a quick way you slide net to upload your slides deck and embed it in the blog post. So 3 of you can write a popular topic, and I would put some marketing resources to promote your work.
Okay.
Thanks, Vivian. I was trying to do I publish the post already, even though all I did was like add a title, or because
You don't need to publish it. I can see the hidden article.
Cool. Okay, let me just save it as a draft then. Okay, thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Vivian.
I have